In August 2018, a 15-year-old girl bicycled to the Swedish Parliament and stood up holding a banner saying, in Swedish, "School strike for the climate." Her name, Greta Thunberg. A surprising movement was born while Greta began to get media attention around the world as a global warming activist, giving speeches in front of the masses talking about climate change. We're going to explain how Thunberg decided to begin this campaign and how, thanks in part to her personality, it has become a worldwide movement named after the phrase on her banner, making Greta one of the most relevant teenagers in the world in 2018, as Time magazine reports. All of this began when she was 8, watching a documentary about ocean pollution at school. She was so impressed that she began researching information on global warming, worrying to the point of falling into a deep depression. Maybe you can think she went too far with her reaction, but it was mostly in part because of her Asperger's syndrome. Let me explain quickly. Asperger's syndrome is a developmental disorder, part of the autism spectrum, characterized by affecting social interaction and nonverbal communication. All this without affecting language or intellectual capabilities. For example, for a person with Asperger, it's hard to recognize sarcasm or irony. Also, the interests of a person with Asperger are strongly focused on a specific topic, which is different in each diagnosis. For someone with Asperger, that topic may be elephants or the rings of Saturn, for example, but in case for Greta, it was global warming. Thunberg once said that probably without her syndrome, she would not have started this movement. She recovered from that depression thanks to the care of her parents and decided to take some action. Her first step was to stop going to school until the upcoming elections and began to protest in front of Parliament, demanding actions against the recent hot waves in the country and demanding control of the carbon emissions in accordance to the Paris Agreement. After the election, she continued striking on Fridays, with other students who occasionally joined her. Greta also convinced her family to become vegan and to give up flying, lowering their carbon footprints. At this point, she began to gain worldwide attention. Newspapers around the world have been talking about her, even calling her a modern version of Joan of Arc for her youth and leadership. She was invited to give a speech on the English language in the People's Climate March held in Sweden in October 2018. Their family didn't think she could make it due to her selective mutism syndrome, which is part of her Asperger. But she said that her mutism had shown her when speaking is needed. And that march was one of those moments. Then she traveled to Brussels to participate in the Rise for the Climate activity outside the European Parliament. Also visited London to be part of the Declaration of Rebellion, organized by the eco-socio-political movement Extinction Rebellion. Her activism has grown to the point that she has given very high-profile public speeches around the world. Her style was straight, without focusing on attacking people at the events. For example, in January 2019, she addressed the World Economic Forum and told the panel, "Some people, some companies, some decision makers in particular, have known exactly what priceless value they have been sacrificing to continue making unimaginable amounts of money. I think many of you here today belong to that group of people." She arrived at Davos after a 32-hour train trip, when some politicians arrived there using their private jets. She was part of the COP24 United Nations Summit about climate change in Poland, where she participated in a panel talk with the UN General Secretary, Antonio Guterres. Also spoke at a 2018 version of TEDx Stockholm, where she explained why she refuses to become a climate scientist, speculating on how future generations will be asking us why we didn't do anything about this in 2018, when there was still time. Last February, she demanded to the European Commission chief to reduce the CO2 emissions by at least 80% for 2030, on a speech given in Brussels. On April 2019, thousands of people gathered in the Marble Arch in London to listen to Greta in an emotional speech during another Extinction Rebellion activity, after she visited Rome to meet Pope Francis, where she acknowledged him for standing up for climate, at the time that Pope Francis encouraged her to keep fighting her fight. On March 15, 2019, students around the world were deliberately absent from school to be part of a strike, asking adults to take responsibility about climate change. The activity reached 130 countries. 1.4 million students attended the 2,200 events held. This was, of course, inspired by Thunberg's actions. A new version of the strike will be held on May 24, 2019, on the anniversary of the Laudato Si, a Pope Francis encyclical which talks about environmental degradation and global warming, among other things. The recognition earned by Greta has reached the point where the Norwegian Parliament nominated her for Nobel Peace Prize. If Thunberg wins, she would become the youngest person to have received it. Time magazine named Thunberg as one of the most influential people of the year. In November last year, she declined a Children's Climate Prize nomination given by an energy company in Sweden because all the finalists had to fly to Stockholm, and she does not take flights. Until March 2019, after earning a lot of recognition, Thunberg still used to attend the Swedish Parliament with her banner and bicycle, same as before, and gives speeches about the world and gets recognition by people like the UN General Secretary. Greta is going places. We'll attach some links related to her activity in a pinned comment if you want to know more about her and her movement. Our goal is to continue making videos like this, which are important, useful, and helpful for the internet society. For that reason, your support really helps us keep doing this. So please subscribe, like, comment, and share our videos. These actions are the lifeblood for us. That's all. Stay fresh.